trust your gut. I mean, your gut as a mother is your superpower.
Yeah.
Like that is a place God has gifted you so much. And that's the problem. All the people we amass that are the experts we amass, all of a sudden we can't find our own voice.
We are on another episode of the Still Coloring Podcast, fam. Well, I'm so excited because on this episode, I have the chills. It just ran through my body just now. I don't know what that is, but I'm excited about it. It may be that donut I just ate, but also it may be the fact that we have Sissy Goff on the podcast. And
I think it's a donut.
You think it's a sugar rush?
Yeah.
It just literally, I mean, it's like I can feel it in my toes. Sissy, I'm so excited. Like, I think that here's a couple, like some context and some background. I've been following you. I'm like, oh, I'm listening to the things. I'm like, raising boys and girls. Here we go. I am looking at the podcast. I'm doing all the things. And I remember getting you on the podcast, booking you. And I started telling my friends, I was like, oh man, I'm so excited. I've got this podcast season coming up. And they're like, who do you have on it? I'm like, I've got Sissy Goff. They're like, oh, wait a minute. They're like, that's going to be the best interview you've ever done. I was like, oh my goodness.
Wow.
My friend
That's
Jamie.
some pressure, Toni.
Yeah. My friend Jamie was like, girl, it's going to be good for your audience, but really it's going to be for you. This is like a free counseling session for you. I'm like, oh snap. But that's how they've all been. And it's cool because I know I have a large demographic of parents, both moms and dads, who are we're really just doing our best. And it feels like we are clawing our way through the valleys of parenting. And here's what I would say. Here's my prayer for this episode. I hope that after these 30-somewhat minutes, we would maybe stop believing that we always have to claw our way and that there can be some brighter days. I think that's like my hope. That like with this conversation, what we talk about, the resources and the strategies that we discuss, maybe for some of us will be like, I feel a little bit more hopeful about parenting. So
I sure believe it.
that's my hope. Sissy, can
That's
you
what
introduce?
you're doing anyway,
is that-
Toni.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Sissy, can you just introduce yourself? Tell us what you do for the people out there that's like, what? Sissy Goff, a parenting expert, down for the cause. Tell them all about what you do and maybe a few nuggets about what we're going to be talking about.
Yes, I live in Nashville, Tennessee, where I have been counseling kids and families for 30 years,
Oh, my God.
which is wild.
That is.
And really grateful to do it at this amazing place called Daystar Counseling, where we are in a little yellow house with a white picket fence.
Come on.
And I get to take my dog to work every day, which is a great part of what I do. We
that
have
is
5
cool.
dogs on staff and I think 2,000 families that are coming to Daystar currently.
Wow.
And so out of that counseling work, I have gotten to write some books and have my own podcast and get to travel and speak and meet families and just trying to help as much as I can, because you're right. I don't think it's ever harder to be a kid, but I don't think it's ever harder to be a parent, at least in the 30 years I've been counseling. And so I'm really excited to get to talk with you and for us to figure out how to help in both places.
That's so good. Well, you have come out with a lot of books and you've got this new book called The Worry-Free Parent. And let me just tell you, it's one of those books that like, I got it in the mail. I opened up my little package and I slid it out and I almost had this like moment of defeat. I was like, is this true? Like, is this real? Can we actually parent without worrying? And I'm excited for this conversation, these solutions, because I really believe we can. And that glimmer of hope like welled up in me. And I'm like, no, this is possible. Like we can do this. And so I think my first question is around that worry and concern. And I think for many of us, especially us millennials who were raised by a generation, or even the generations before us who were raised by a generation that, you know, maybe labeled feelings as excuses, maybe labeled a counseling office as like a taboo place. And for many of us, we numbed. And I think that's a valid concern for parents. Let's talk a little bit about what the generations before us got wrong. Sissy, what do you think?
Toni, I love that you're talking about that, because you're right. I mean, we everywhere we go, we take feelings charts and we joke about how none of us were passing feelings charts around our dinner tables.
Yep.
But the importance of, I mean, it's why I love what you're doing. We need to be talking about our feelings. We need to be asking the kids we love about their feelings, because what happens when we don't? I mean, obviously we know later on it can create substance abuse. It can create depression. The statistics on anxiety that are going through the roof, suicide, so many different things when we're not talking about those. But I mean, I've been doing this deep dive on anxiety lately. And
Yeah.
at this point, it's 1 in 3 kids, with girls twice as likely as boys, but it's also 1 in 3 adults, with women twice as likely. And
Gosh.
and it's fascinating because one of the things I realized sitting with kids is every single kid I've ever met who's anxious is really bright. They're
Yeah.
really conscientious. They care so much. They try so hard. And I believe the same is true about parents. And so anxiety is the most prevalent disorder right now, but it's also the most treatable. So you're right. There's so many good things we can do quickly to change the game for all of us.
Gosh, I love that so much. I love this balance. I feel like a lot of your content is very well balanced. It's like reality, truth, like we have to name it. We're doing our best to just be direct. But then there's also this like glimmer of hope. And I just feel like you eloquently did that just now in the answer. It's like, this is real. These are the facts. 1 in 3. Like that's a real big statistic that could maybe crush some people. Like, oh my goodness, like I could maybe expect my child to have anxiety. I could maybe expect myself as a parent to have anxiety. However, because those things are real and because now I think a whole generation's getting good at naming it, hello somebody,
Yes.
I think we've come up with some more solutions. Okay, so let me ask you this. One more hard question, I would say, and then we'll move into
Okay.
all the glory and the hope. What's at stake here? What's at stake when we don't utilize resources like counseling, when we don't ask our kids to name their feelings, when we don't lean into the really hard? What's at stake for us as parents?
Well, I think when we're not doing our own work, it will inevitably ripple over into the lives of our kids. And
That's good.
I believe too the way you talk to yourself will become the way you talk to them without doing the work. And so, the amazing thing, we are equipped now. Our parents didn't have a clue. I mean, when I was growing up, there was one parenting book, and I think all it said was smile at your baby a lot, you know?
Just show
And
them that you're
so
happy even when you're not.
Right.
That's it. Uh-huh.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And
Uh-huh.
now I think we're so much better equipped, but I think it's easy for parents right now to feel overwhelmed by being so equipped and overwhelmed by all the things we feel that we often don't trust our own guts, that we get kind of it can be
Like,
debilitating.
what did
And I
that
think
post say? Like in the middle, let me go back to that post, that save Instagram
yes.
post. Yeah, that's
Yes,
good.
yes. And that's one thing I want parents to hear so strongly is when we can quiet the voice of worry and learn to trust our guts and believe that the Holy Spirit's leading our guts, you got this as a mom. Like, you know what you're doing. Trust yourself.
Wait, okay, you just said something that gave me chills a little bit. You said, when we can learn to quiet the voice of worry. How do we do that?
Well, I think first it's recognizing it because often worry and anxiety feel like good parenting because to be a parent, you have to be vigilant, but it so easily crosses over into hypervigilance. And so I have 3 questions I would ask parents to figure out, is this the voice of worry or is this the voice of just being a good mom or a good dad? And one is the thought circular or linear? Are you with kids, I call it the one loop roller coaster at the fair. We have this
Yeah.
intrusive worst case scenario thought that comes in and it gets stuck. So are you stuck in this looping thought or is it moving you toward action? First, is it circular or linear? 2, is your emotion as a result of that thought bigger than the situation warrants? Because
'Cause I'm dramatic. What? What? Got it.
you're passionate. Let's say it that way. You're
Thank
passionate.
you. Thank you, Mom.
Yes. And number 3, is it causing you to be more possessive with the kids you love, to hold tight? The 2 most common parenting strategies in light of anxiety are escape and avoidance. So we rescue them. And that is the opposite. They need to learn to do the hard things. And so is it causing you to be possessive or progressive, where you're letting them move forward and develop resilience and independence with your help?
Ooh,
Because you can do it.
they can do it. I got convicted on that third one, that possessive one that you said, but we're gonna keep it going. It's fine. Everything's good. I'm gonna pray and process that. I'll ask it for myself later. Okay, here's one of the things that you say. You say we need to connect with our kids more than we correct them. I
Mm.
essentially am picking the quotes that you said that convict me. Okay, and hopefully the people that are listening get something out of it too. I'm a lecturer. I know that I am. I feel like I spend more time correcting than connecting, and I really don't know how to get out of that rat race. I'm like, well, I have to. I'm her mom. but it's so hard for me to connect. Can you talk a little bit about how we get out of this rat race of correcting all the time and balance it out with connecting?
Well, I mean, to remember that one of the things happening when we spend time with kids and we're looking them in the eye and we're enjoying them is, for one thing, their brains are literally growing new neural pathways. They're learning self regulation just by connecting emotionally with us, is an important thing.
Wow.
But also, in this day and time, I just don't think kids have ever had as many knocks against their self confidence. And so when we are delighting in kids, when we're playing with them, we're engaging with them, we are building so much into their confidence and who they are, which is really important. And when we're, I think often when we're correcting them, it's out of this sense of they're going to miss it.
Yeah.
They're not going to know
Yeah.
they don't know what they need. It's back to that anxious place for us. Instead of realizing a lot of the work is kids learning to connect the dots on their own. And so I will say to parents a lot, I want you to, well, two primary things. One is I want you to think about letting the bottom 20% go. So, what are the 10 things that you're battling with them the most?
Yeah.
And how can you pick the bottom two and not just stop trying to fix it or correct it, but stop talking about it? Number one. And number two, how can you have more empathy and questions? That sounds so hard. What do you want to do about it? What do you think's the right thing? Because when we ask questions, we're implying that we believe they're capable.
Oh, we are. Well, that's so good. I'm like literally thinking about every conversation I have with my daughter just yesterday. And I'm like, did I do that? And I think that's like one of the things that we battle with as parents. Like, I feel like for a lot of us, we're always looking back. And I think that's one of the things that drive our anxiety as parents is like, we're always looking back at that thing that we said. How bad did that messed them up? How many counseling sessions is going to come out of what I did to them?
Mm.
And I just wonder, Sissy, what your thoughts are on those of us that are just so concerned and anxious about the past mistakes that we've made as we're on this journey to be better parents. What would you say to us?
Oh, I would say I'm so grateful that they're listening to your podcast
Oh,
because you're right. I mean, in all these years of doing this work, I've never sat with as many parents who feel like failures. And when I was doing the research for this book, one of the things that I heard repeatedly, which I think is fascinating, is attachment theory, which obviously we know is a big part of counseling
I've
and
got a
everything right now.
0 out of 10 on that right now.
But do you know what they say? Attachment theorists say that good parents get it right 50% of the time.
Girl, 50. I'm killing it.
50.
I'm crushing
That's what it takes for your child in their infancy when their brain is growing faster than any other window of development. You only need to get it right 50% of the time. And that's in this really most important season of their brain development. So it's true for the rest, 50%. And if you're listening to this
Wow.
parenting podcast, you're getting it right more than 50% of the time. If you have a parenting podcast, you're
You
working hard
yourself.
and you're trying. Yes.
That's
You're
really,
getting
really
it right more
good.
than 50%.
Oh, okay. So what do we do about all this information? It's like, it's good stuff, right? But I do feel like it's feeding our anxiety as parents. I'm like, did I Montessori this enough? Like, are the toys too colorful? Someone like, do
That's
I have
so
the right size
good.
shelf? Like, is he able to
Yes.
pick up his own toys? Like, I'm sure there's a balance. How do we filter all this? How do we exist with all this information?
I really feel like it is wise for parents to pick a couple of voices, Tony's being one, that you trust in this space and don't follow 500 parenting people. It's
That's
just we
good.
all have different opinions. And so pick the ones that you trust their voice the most and then let the rest go. And I really do think today connecting with your kids and enjoying them is the most important thing we can do besides doing our own work.
Okay, I had like a more serious question, but I just want to ask this question for the parents out there that have been forced to play with Barbie dolls and trucks. Um, Sissy, I'm gonna be 100% with you. I don't like to.
Please.
I don't want to play with
Yeah,
them Barbie dolls. I don't want to
I
pretend to
know.
be Ken every time. I'm like, why can't I be one of the other Barbie dolls? Why do I have to be the guy? I don't understand. And I just have a real hard time connecting because the way that my daughter connects as a child is just so different than the way that I connect with other adults. Like, what
Right.
do we need to do? Are we just like sticking it out and kind of being irritated a little bit? Like, what do we do to connect with them?
Well, I think part of it might be lowering the pressure you feel on the amount of time you need to connect with them. Because I think even 10 minutes a day is of
A
just
day?
one-on-one,
Sissy,
yeah,
this is
playtime.
saving me right now. This is
I'm
saving
so
me.
glad. Well, you're having tons of time with them, but just that focused on the floor or sitting in the chair next to them, engaging 10 minutes, I think is a game changer. And
That's
so,
amazing.
but I would say yes, at every stage of their development, we need to be a student of what they love because that's really an inroad into their heart and connecting with them. So Barbies or video games are the things you don't care about. And yes, because it's changing. You're
It's
right.
changing because we had a Barbie stint last year and I was like, I can't do this anymore. But I was doing 30 minutes, Sissy. And when I could have been like, oh my gosh, 10 minutes, can't even wait for our little 10 minutes. And I was
Yes.
doing 30.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay, that's really, really good. Um, I I've been thinking a lot about this as well because one of the things you said was that we all have different opinions. And
Right.
one of the things that I struggled with a whole bunch is like sleep training. Oh my goodness.
Yes.
When I had my daughter who's 9 years old way back then, didn't nobody care what you were doing with your kid. They're just like, is she sleeping or nah? Like that was it.
Right.
And then for my son, oh my goodness, there were sleep pods. I don't even know what those little things are called, bassinets that essentially raised your kid for you. Like so many different things. And I remember feeling so absolutely overwhelmed. And I just want to nod to what you said, pick a few voices. I picked
Yeah.
a voice. They'll actually be on the podcast this season. And I was like, okay, I can't. Like some people telling me, write it out. Your baby don't need a schedule. My brain is like, well, everybody else in the world is on a schedule. Why these little tiny humans don't need to be on a schedule? There's all these different opinions. And I stuck to one voice about how they did it. And I followed it. And let me just say that my 8-week-old slept from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. and has not ever missed a night. So
Wow.
I know.
Way to go.
Okay. Some sort of
That's
sorcery.
awesome.
It's been amazing. But I think you're right. It did ease my anxiety. I was like, I don't know
Yeah.
what schedule to go with. I don't know what's right. I don't know what's wrong. Cry it out for how long? What do I do?
And look what's happening to you. You're not trusting your
look,
voice anymore.
and I'm not trusting my
It's
voice
not
anymore.
just I don't know who to follow, but it's I don't even know what my own opinion is. Rather than trust your gut. I mean, your gut as a mother is your superpower.
Yeah.
Like that is a place God has gifted you so much. And that's the problem. All the people we amass that are the experts we amass, all of a sudden we can't find our own voice.
This is so good. Okay, what do you say to the person for many of us, we don't talk about this a lot. It's a taboo topic. It's not fatherhood wounds, but for many of us it's motherhood wounds, right? Like my mom was really sick growing up and unfortunately she just could not provide the care and attention and physical presence that she would have liked to. She was paralyzed for a little while, then there was seizures and anxiety attacks and all the
So
things
sorry.
really really difficult. And I think that I go to all of these voices and get all this information and order all these books because I'm so afraid of my own inadequacies because of what I didn't have.
Yes.
What do you say to the mom who's like, well, I just didn't have the model? How can I trust my instinct? I feel like I never saw it. I don't really know how to replay, or I did see it and I saw it really abusive or, verbally abusive or really wrong. How do I get it right now when I didn't have that example?
Well, I mean, I still would say pray like crazy that the Holy Spirit's going to lead your gut.
I'm
But
on.
I also think there is a couple that I meet with regularly and they're doing an amazing job as parents and they did not have any role model. And so they come in to meet with me just to say, we just want somebody to bounce things off of to say, you're doing great. And I think if you need another voice, like a
That's good.
therapist in your life or an older person that can mentor you that has already raised kids and you could say, hey, does this sound like it makes sense? I think it is brilliant to have that kind of, again, one or two other voices in our lives. And yeah. And I think it's even good to model for the kids we love. I have to ask for help too.
I have to ask for help too. Look at me. Really for you. And don't do it like in a pompous way because I sometimes want to tell my daughter, I just want you to know that I just invested $175 in counseling session for your behind. I'm just kidding. I do want to say that, but I do not say that. Okay. Here's something that you said that I really love. You said worry criticizes us, it condemns us, it lies to us, it limits us, and it prevents us from being the parents that we truly long to be. And I love the second line that you said. You said, I'm mad about it. You're like, as a counselor, I am just so mad. I don't know how. I don't know how to do that. Like, I just
Mm,
am my biggest critic, and
yeah.
I don't know how to shake that off every day.
Mm,
I don't know. What do
mhm.
we do about that?
I have a whole chapter in the book called Try Softer because I had a conversation with a dear friend who said that to me. Isn't that beautiful? Try softer. And I think to get to a place where we can try softer, where we can say that was good enough, because those of us who have that critical voice in our heads, we're putting out 175%. Like it's beyond the
9
norm.
times out of 10, we really are. Yeah.
Seriously. And
That's
so,
funny.
Toni, if you were to rein that in and you were to shoot for 80%, it would be a beautiful thing and you'd be knocking it out of the park. And so, even to think about how can I just let good enough be enough and
Yeah.
start to give myself more grace. There's a author I like named Richard Rohr, and he said, we grow more by getting it wrong than by getting it right.
Oh, snap. I don't like that, but it's so good.
It's so true. And so how can we start to say, I also talk about having more oops than shoots instead of like, shoot, I messed that up. Like, okay, oops. That was a mistake. I'm going
Sissy,
to
I
keep moving
love
forward.
that. Oops.
Well, I'm trying to learn it too, but
I'm gonna say that to myself one day. Oops. Just didn't get that one right, girlfriend. I can't even imagine
right.
myself giving me a pass like that. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna promise myself that this weekend I'm gonna say oops more than shoots.
Yes, good. I love that. I want to
That's
hear how
so
it
good.
goes.
Okay, I will. I'll post about it on the Instagrams.
Okay.
Okay, so here's another thing that I've been wrestling with and trying to figure out how to talk about, and it's parents that have kids with disabilities, behavioral challenges, kids with Down syndrome. Like it's so delicate, and it's such a dance and how we talk about it. I'm just such a huge advocate of vulnerability, but for my daughter, there's a lot of parts of her story that are not mine to tell. And I just wonder what you would say to the parent who really wants to talk about that. Is that
Mm,
counseling? Can we have conversations with other friends? How do we honor children in their struggles, but also like have safe spaces where we can be honest as parents about how hard it is?
it is hard.
It is
Yes.
hard. Yes. How do we have those conversations? Yeah.
Yeah, I love that you're thinking that way and
Yeah.
and and that it's both. That of course you need to process and you want to honor her story and there are parts of it that aren't yours to tell. And so I mean, I think it's all those things. I think it's picking one or two friends that you feel like are really safe, that you trust that they're not going to try and step in and give you all the answers because none of us have walked in someone else's shoes, but they're going to do a lot of listening and a lot of cheering you on and a counselor that can, I mean, I had a mom come in. I've never had a parent say this. And she said, I'm going to tell you where I want this counseling session to go. And I want
Oh,
you to tell me two things by the end of this, which I loved it. And she said, I want you to tell me that what I'm feeling normal is and that I'm doing a good job. And I think that is so much of what I do in my day is say to parents, what you're feeling is normal and you're doing great. And so if you have to pay someone to be a totally neutral party that can say that and help give you some more practical tools too. But I think it's so important. You've got to what you said is so true. Parenting a child with special needs, whatever those look like,
yeah.
is really hard and it's really isolating and you need somebody to be able to carry the load with you.
Yeah. I just want to affirm like the friend thing. It's so interesting that you said that because I've got my best friend Ashley. She is incredible. She has walked with me for a very long time through all the ups and downs of my daughter. And literally yesterday, I texted her about it and she sent me a voice note back and she was like, okay, so what do you guys think we're going to do? What do you think about school, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm listening to it and I'm like, oh my gosh, I haven't even really thought about all those things. About 30 seconds later, she sends me another voice note and goes, I'm so sorry. Like, I guess, I don't know. I'm on your team and I really want the best for her. And I think I just like dove straight in and was asking all these questions that you probably don't have any answers to. And I just want to say like, I'm sorry, this is hard. And
What an
yeah,
amazing friend.
I know. And it just
Yeah.
dawned on me because I'm like, we do need those friends because a lot of the people that we're talking to as parents with kids with special needs, parents of kids with special needs, we're talking to behavioral therapists, we're talking to psychiatrists and psychologists and school
Sure.
counselors, and those conversations are not, you're doing a good job. They are, what are we going to do? How are we going to do this?
Yeah.
Dosages, da 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 da, all these things. And we do need those people that'll just say, I'm just like here and I support you and I want the best for your kid. And to hear that there is another human being who wants what you want, it almost feels like sharing the weight of parenting, if that makes
Oh,
sense. It's like
yes, it's a
I can give a
beautiful way
little
to
bit of
say it.
my worry to her
Yes. Yeah, and she can
with
carry
your
it with
village,
me.
and she can carry it with
Yeah.
me. I just want to affirm that. Shout out to Ashley. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, way to
Um,
go, Ashley.
Way to go, Ashley. You're doing your thing. Okay, I want to talk about like shifts in parenting a little bit. So I
Mhm.
kind of sort of am in this weird place where I have a 1-year old and then a 9-year old, which ooh, that gap, I don't feel it right now,
Yes,
but I feel like one day I'm gonna feel it. I'm gonna feel
you
that
are.
8-year
Yeah.
gap. You are.
Yeah.
I love how you
But
whispered
it's
it.
gonna be helpful too,
But
maybe.
it's gonna be oh, she's a little
Yeah.
mama. She is a little
I
mama to her
bet.
little brother, honey. Um, but one of the things that I've been concerned about, maybe not worried about, are these these generational shifts, I guess you would call it, in the way that I parent. So obviously, the way that I parent my 1-year old is very different from the way that I'm parenting my 9-year old. And she notices it, right? Like she's just like, "Oh, you are
Of
just like
course.
so sweet to Sammy, and you give him so many hugs. I want more hugs," which we enforce the 10-second hug rule, and that's awkward. I want to be honest about that. It's very weird, but it's very helpful to my daughter. How do
Good.
we as parents keep up with the way that we generationally shift through their ages? My daughter's 9. I'm sure there's some things that I should be doing different now. I don't know what those are. Can you talk a little bit about how our parenting changes and how we navigate that over time?
Yeah. I mean, that's a great way to say it, the generational shifting, because it does. I mean, time changes, you change, especially when there's that kind of gap in the years, because hopefully we're all learning and growing more every single year. And so you're going to have more and different things to bring to the table as you get older. You're going to be more laid back about certain things. So I think that's a part of it. I think
That's good.
gender is a part of it. I think moms and girls, dads and boys, moms and I mean, there are some things that come up, yes, in those unique situations. And so, I mean, I just think always keeping in mind to say, I think it's great when parents say to the older one, there is not a guidebook on this, and we are figuring it out, and we're sorry. We're figuring it out with you. We love you. We're doing the best we know how. And I mean, that on one hand, and on the other hand, that whole silly thing about, the fair is an amusement park. It's not what we're going for in our family. That's not our goal.
What? It's not our goal.
Yes.
Wait, unpack that a little bit.
Well, those kids, and I think often the oldest ones are the ones who are saying, they got more. You did this. You were different in this way. Whatever. Technology is a huge place that lands, but it can even be they get ice cream more than I do. And to say fair is not what I'm shooting for as a family, that's not my goal. My goal is to parent each of you in terms of what you need.
Oh my
And
gosh,
I'm
I
going to
just
do my
got it.
best to discern that.
The people that are listening and watching are probably like, "Toni, why did you need that explained?" But the fair is an
No.
amusement park. It's not
Yes.
that's not fair, mom. That's not fair. It's like the fair
Yeah.
is an amusement park. That is not what we're shooting for.
Yeah.
I just got it. I'm fine. I've had a little bit of coffee. Everything's gonna go really well. Okay, we're gonna go a little practical and then we're gonna get ourselves out of here. Sissy, I can't imagine how hard this question is gonna be for you because of the well of knowledge you have. Okay. But if there was one practical tip, I mean, I don't even know which one you would pull out. There's so much good in what you say and the resources that you produce. But if there was one, okay, that you would like to leave with the parents that are listening and watching when it comes to helping little kids process their big feelings, if there's one thing that you would say, what would it be?
Well, one of the mistakes that I feel like parents sometimes fall into that I hear about in this beautiful desire to have kids process their feelings, which is so important, is that I think sometimes in the moment we're trying too hard to get them to process when they're not in a brain that can.
Oh my gosh.
So, I mean, you probably know this, but when we get really anxious, the blood flow in our brain shifts and it leaves the prefrontal cortex that helps us think rationally and manage our emotions. And it goes to the amygdala, that's the fight or flight part of our brain. So, when kids are anxious, when they're angry, parents will say to me, they're like a crazy person. Well, right, because the thinking part of their brain isn't even working. And so, if when they're melting down, I'm saying, now tell me why, explain that to me. Tell me what you're feeling in this moment They don't know. They are blinded by their amygdala. And so one of my favorite tools is for families to have a code word. And it's a silly word that everybody comes up with together, watermelon. Can we order pizza? I don't know why I'm coming up with food related words,
I
but
love because we're
whatever
hungry
the
and we're
word
doing
is.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Whatever the word is. And when we say that, that means we're going to pause and we're all going to take a few minutes and we're going to do some breathing. We're going to do some things that we know get our bodies back to a thinking place. Maybe we separate. Maybe you as the parent lock yourself in your room for a minute if you have to, because that is totally appropriate. Then we're going to come back when everybody's calmed down and we're going to pull out the feelings chart. And then we're going to each say 3 things we were feeling when we can talk about it and get to a helpful, healthy place, because we're not going to when we're all melting down.
Oh,
So that
my
pause, maybe
goodness.
that's the best way.
The pause. I
Pause
love
code
that.
word.
I love that because we are I just can't tell you how many times I wish there was a camera in our house and I'm just like, it's okay. Let's calm down and talk about our feelings. Let's sit down over here on the couch. We're going to talk about our feelings. We're going to swim in the ocean of emotion. Aren't we, kids? Like, oh my goodness. And my daughter is like, I am leaving this house. Like, it is over. That is so beautiful because here's why it's so beautiful. I feel like as adults, we're like, oh yeah, obviously we need a beat. But then when we do it with children for some reason, it's almost like the rules don't apply to us. And I've been wrestling
Yeah.
and praying through that dynamic too. We're talking about these like innocent children. I said this on another episode, who actually don't require us to be integral or humble because they're little and they're helpless. And the challenge is if we as parents can humble ourselves down to say things like, hey, I'm just figuring it out. I actually don't know. There's no guidebook here. I'm just figuring it out.
I'm sorry.
Like that requires
Yeah.
humility. I'm sorry. But it requires humility that we actually don't have to have because this is like a tiny human that doesn't really hold us accountable. And so that type of willpower I've been praying through and processing through and really trying to talk about so that my body can start doing it. And then I love this idea of saying like, this is a small human made in the image of God. Like this is God's son and daughter too. And they need a lot of the things that I need. And I don't know, I'm missing that. I'm like, I don't know what that is. But I am trying to view my daughter as an equivalent to me in the way specifically of being a daughter of God who has worth and value and who could take a beat when she's losing it and have a moment to just breathe. Oh,
Yes, exactly.
that's so convicting for me. And I just really love it. Anywho,
I think you're doing amazing.
thank you. Sissy, tell us a little bit about your book. I'm so excited about it. I'm so excited for people to get it. Tell us about it.
Well,
What's your heart behind it and what's your goal for it?
I mean, as we're talking about how things have shifted generationally, I really haven't ever seen as many parents feel as discouraged and defeated and anxious and angry, which I talk in the book about how I think anxiety is what's behind that. So much of the time, I don't think it's because you're angry because you're a bad parent. I think you really want the best for your kids, and it's exactly what you said a minute ago. I'm mad. I'm mad that worry and anxiety are getting in the way of these people that I meet that are amazing people that feel like they can't get to that with their kids. And so I wanted to give really practical, helpful, boots on the ground things you can do and a whole lot of hope to say this doesn't have to define who you are as a person or a parent.
Oh, a whole lot of hope. You know, one of my little titles is Hope Coach. One of my women on my team called me that, and I was like,
Aw.
oh, I'm gonna steal that forever and ever. The worry-free parent. I want to be that. I'm gonna pledge. By the end of the year, I'm gonna give myself the end of the year. We got a couple months. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think it's gonna be
Yeah.
overnight,
Yep.
right?
You're
We're gonna
gonna
read
move
your
towards
book,
it.
and we're
I
gonna
love
move
it.
towards it. And by the end of the year, I'm gonna be maybe I'll print myself a little sticker or something like that. The worry-free parent. Maybe we'll get some shirts, Sissy, and we could just like start wearing.
Ooh.
Once someone finishes your book, they can just put the worry-free parent and just wear it every day. We're wearing the same sweats every day anyway, girls. Okay, so just put the shirt on and remind yourself that you too can be
So
a worry-free
good.
parent.
That's
Get
so
excited,
good.
Sissy. I'm grateful for you.
Oh, I'm so grateful for you,
Yeah,
Toni. So glad to get to
I
meet you.
am, and I am not because of anything professional, everything personal. Because
Mm.
I'm a struggling, worrying parent that's doing her best, and
Yeah.
so thank you.
Thank you for the good you're putting out in the world and the difference you're making.
Woo, child. Sissy, you know what? Can you pray us out? I think that's going to be good.
Yes, I would
I'm going to do
love
that.
to.
Let's pray for
Yes.
these parents.
Father, thank you for every parent that is listening to this time. Thank you for Toni and the kindness and the warmth and the humor and the truth that she speaks into their lives. And we just pray that you would equip them with every good thing they need for these kids that you have specifically, purposefully entrusted to them. And Lord, that they would trust you in that and they would trust their guts, that they would know that you're speaking to them in those places. And Father, we thank you for this time and thank you for Jesus. It's in his name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I do love you, Sissy. I do.
You too, Toni.